7 biggest mistakes you're making with your rehab that are keeping you injured. So I've got all the questions down here from people on my phone. I'm just going to run through them. Obviously, if you jump on the chat, just feel free to ask any questions. So, first one, how do you know when pain during training is okay and when it's a red flag? So, I assume you mean here a red flag when it's the pain is bad or it's linked to an injury. So this can be quite a tricky one. The main thing to understand here is when that pain is like muscular and when it's actually it's not muscular and there's something else going on. And what I mean by muscular is like you've done a really hard workout and you're just tired. Pain in that sense versus pain like my knee hurts. That's a different sort of pain, and that's very subjective depending on the person, and it's really down to you. The main thing as well to think about here is kind of your baseline, and maybe you do have a few niggles that you just have at a baseline. Maybe your knee is quite sore, maybe your lower back's quite sore, maybe you just have a stiff neck and you've had these things for a long period of time. If then suddenly you pick up something else, then more than likely that pain isn't related to training, and it's not necessarily a red flag, but it's definitely something you should get looked at and potentially fixed. So another good example, if you've been training for 3 or 4 years without any injuries and then suddenly you're starting to get knee pain, so it's not like your quadriceps are sore, it's not like your hamstrings are sore, it's not like your calves are sore, like you've actually got pain in your knee and it's related to a particular activity that you've been doing, which has caused it maybe or has set it off, then it's not a red flag, but it's definitely something that you need to get sorted and see someone for or work with a coach or physio for. Hint, hint, if you want to work with me, there is a link down below in the description. Just check out my coaching if you are interested. What's the biggest mistake people make when trying to train through an injury? Great question. So the biggest mistake I see with people is pushing or rushing through the range of motion and exercises, forcing range of motion too quickly. What do I mean by this? Well, when I give people rehab exercises and when we start doing them, a lot of the time, let's say for example, someone's got a very stiff and sore lower back. When they start doing the exercise, they might only be able to go through half of the normal amount of movement just because they're stiff and blocked up. But instead of just working into that range, a lot of people try to fight through the pain and fight into that tension and push through it because they think it's a good thing, because in training that's a good thing, but actually with an injury it usually makes it worse. So what you need to do is work into a comfortable range where you're getting a little bit of pain. Again, imagine that scale of 0 to 10. 10 is the worst pain imaginable, 0 is no pain. As long as you work within that 0 to 3 out of 10 range, you're absolutely fine. Work into that for a few weeks or a few months and then gradually increase the range of movement. The simplest example here or analogy is a squat. If you're trying to improve your squat depth, one of the simplest ways to actually do this is to get a box, in my opinion, and then sit down to the box and then over time just gradually decrease the height of the box. And it's a similar approach here with rehab when it comes to exercises. So a lot of the time, yeah, people are fighting. They're fighting through the tension. They're trying to push through the pain because that's what normally works with training. Doesn't work with rehab. Next question. How much rest do you actually need after getting injured? So I think here we need to define what you mean by rest. If rest is just doing nothing, sat on the sofa, or if rest is going to get a massage, acupuncture, or other hands-on treatment, then it's probably not going to do anything for your injury and it's probably going to make the issue worse. The reason I say this is people think that you need to rest completely to fix an injury, whereas realistically fixing an injury is just the same thing as training for a 5K. You still need to improve all these different physical qualities that you need for the 5K. Maybe you need to get stronger legs. Maybe you just need to get better cardio by running more. Maybe you need to improve your running form. Same thing with fixing knee pain. Let's use that as the example. Maybe you need to get stronger quads. Maybe you need to improve your hip mobility. Maybe you need to improve your ankle mobility. Maybe you need to improve how your feet are working. Maybe you just need to let your knees move in a certain way, and maybe you don't move them in a certain way because you've been told something incorrect. So educational things around it as well. For example, when I ruptured my Achilles about a year ago actually this month, after I completed a triathlon, an Ironman, which is a 3.8k swim, 100 and something miles on the bike, and then a marathon. And then I went back to training too soon. I ruptured my Achilles, but I had the surgery, and then 3 or 4 days after, I was back in the gym, not doing stuff for my Achilles, but I was still doing upper body work because I just had a cast. I was on crutches. I could still do upper body work. I could still train my quads and hamstrings. I could still train other muscles in my legs. So that's just a good example there. Rest will make it worse most of the time. It's complete rest. And then also with hands-on treatment, before I forget, the reason the massage, the acupuncture and all that isn't working is because it's not improving any of those physical qualities. It's not improving your mobility, strength, conditioning, confidence. And it's actually making those things worse because you become reliant on that short-term pain relief from the hands-on treatment. Next question. Why do injuries keep coming back? Why do injuries keep coming back even after physio or massage? So one of the big things here is you need to look at what you're doing as part of physio. The massage I've just spoken about, that kind of answers its own question. The massage isn't doing anything because it's not improving physical qualities, it's not improving your confidence to move and do the thing you want to get back to. The physio massively depends on what you're actually doing with the physio. If a physio is just giving you hands-on treatment, like the massage, again, it's not going to do much. And if the physio, a lot of the time, is underloading you and only giving you 2 or 3 banded exercises to do at home, instead of integrating training into this with strength work for your lower and upper body and actually testing and working on what you need to get back to if you want to get back to sport, then it's not going to do anything. If you want to get back to playing like football or rugby, you actually need to be very, very strong, very, very fast, very, very confident in hopping and bounding. And so if a physio is just giving you, some banded exercises on the floor for the whole process of rehab, that's not going to be good enough to get you back to, running, jumping, sprinting, whatever it may be. How do you balance strength work and rehab exercises in the same week? Okay, so I'll run through what I normally do with online clients. So with most people, regardless of the injury, I will give them between 2 to 4 days of strength work, split either upper body days, lower body days, and some full body days. And these are usually between 45 minutes up to 90 minutes for higher level athletes like semi-professional footballers or rugby players. But for most people, 45 minutes. And then the mobility stuff is usually daily, and that takes people literally 5 minutes because I want to make it easy for people to do, low friction, and the most important thing with anything is can you be consistent with it? And if it's a 25, 30-minute mobility routine every day, people aren't going to do it. So 5 minutes mobility daily, and then let's say 2 to 4 45-minute strength sessions. So if you actually add up that time-wise, it's not a lot of time per week. It's just about doing the right things and focusing on the right areas. Is mobility training overrated or underrated for injury prevention? So we need to define what mobility training is. If I was going to define mobility, I would just say it's moving better. Whereas I think nowadays with all these mobility apps, with yoga, with Pilates, with a lot of different things, it's kind of it's overused and overprescribed. If I was talking about mobility on a very simple level at a joint, let's take your foot. You've got a painful Achilles, you've got a painful big toe, you've got a painful foot. If it's stiff and it's painful and it can't move into a certain movement, what do we need to do? We need to get it less stiff, we need to get it moving. It's a very simple formula I apply with a lot of things. A lot of physios overcomplicate it, and if someone is usually overcomplicating something, again, I'll use an example of a stiff back. Maybe someone can't bend forward. Well, then we need to gradually expose them to that movement and improve that movement. I really think it's that simple. It's like, what is the body designed to do in terms of movement? Can the person do that? If not, how can we get them doing that? Same thing with walking, same thing with running. Can they not access a certain part of the running cycle when they're running? Can they not strike through the floor very efficiently. Well, can we improve that? I don't think it needs to go beyond that sort of level of complexity. What's the number one thing I do differently if I got injured today versus 5 years ago? Well, that's a good question. So I've definitely learnt a lot more in 5 years. 5 years ago, I probably would have just done too much strength work. So I probably would have just gone in the gym and done too much work with a barbell, just done loads of squats, loads of deadlifts, loads of your traditional bodybuilding stuff. Not that that's bad. What I do differently today is I do a much bigger variety of things. So I do mobility work like I spoke about. So I'd get the stiff joint moving, or if there's any other joints that are limiting that joint, I'd get it moving. So using the example again of knee pain, a lot of people with knee pain are actually very limited in their hips and feet. So I do some mobility for my hips and feet as an example. Then what I would do is I would probably do some strength training for the injured area and try to desensitize the pain. So with knee pain, I would do some isometrics. All an isometric exercise is just holding one position for a period of time to get the quads and hamstrings working. So I'd use something like a single leg wall sit, a single leg extension hold, or a foam roller bridge for the hamstrings where you're lying on your back and you've got your feet flat on a foam roller, you're lifting your hips up a little bit. Then from there, I would go into other bits of strength work for other areas of weakness that I'll probably have because of the knee pain. So things like calves, things like glutes, things like other hip muscles, abductors, adductors, the list goes on. And then once I get to a certain level, I would also start to reintroduce speed qualities and plyometrics. So jumping, bounding, things like that. But obviously I would scale that all appropriately. So you'd start nice and low level, and then you get up to bigger and bigger jumps, more expansive bounds, running, change of direction, all that sort of stuff. So the main thing is a bigger variety of stuff instead of just pure strength work. So mobility stuff and plyometrics as well. And the last little thing I would add is just to walk more. Walking is incredibly underrated for full body mobility, base level of cardio, and reducing stress as well, which is a massive part of injuries. Yeah, I think that's everything there. Perfect. So that's all the questions. I will see you guys tomorrow. I'm not sure what time I'm doing the live stream tomorrow because it's a Sunday, but I'll let you know. Join the WhatsApp channel. That's on my YouTube community post, and then I'll update you 30 minutes before I do every live stream.